So what we want to do is we want to start today off with a good conversation for you, with many different interesting participants, focused specifically on how do we inspire action. We know that any individual person, organization, company, meeting will never be able to fix the climate crisis. But we also know that working together, we can truly do it. And I'm a climate scientist, so if there's anyone who's more pessimistic about our outcomes than climate scientists, I have yet to meet them. But I specifically, as a scientist, I look at future projections and I can see the impact our choices make. In fact, it's no exaggeration to say that our future is literally in our hands. So by talking together about what we are each doing, our hope is that this brief time we have together will inspire each other to see how no matter who we are, where we come from, what we do, we all have a role to play in making sure that our action speaks. So I want to introduce our first commentator. Our first commentator comes to us from Harvard by way of Texas. I live in Texas as well. Angela Zhang is a student at Harvard who is not only studying environmental sciences and policy, she is sleeping in a tent here at Davos. So I want you to come and tell us, what is it that you're most worried about? What keeps you up at night when you think about the future? What gives you hope? And what are you doing sleeping in a tent at Davos?
Hi, Catherine. Thank you so much for that. And hello, everyone in the audience. Love the introduction. Yes, that is my title for the week, Tent Lady. But thank you so much to Inca and everyone for having me here. I think inclusion is definitely something we all care about. So me being in this space is super, super important for that as well. And to inject lived experiences, I think is incredibly important because it's really easy to know about climate science, but it's also easy to forget about those lived realities when you're in corporate boardrooms or in nice retreats in ski resorts. And so I'm here today to share a little bit about my story and to share a little bit about what we should be doing moving forward. So as Catherine mentioned, I'm from Houston, and so it's supportedly the energy capital of the United States, but it's also where a lot of the natural disasters have happened. So growing up in the public school system, I missed months of school because of flash floods and hurricanes and energy grid failures and chemical leaks and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I would see all these very nicely manicured houses in very white suburban areas that didn't know what to do when the floods came up to their door. And so I think we need to really be rethinking what wealth means in that setting. And so now, yes, I go to Harvard, and I think some of what I've been learning in school is that there's a number of tipping points that we're about to hit. In fact, 6 of them, even just 1.5 degrees, which we're definitely on track for. And I think what scares me about these 6 tipping points is not only that they're irreversible or that they have cascading effects on things that we purportedly care about, like poverty or health here at Davos, but also that a lot of our economic models don't seem to take all of these into account because there's high levels of uncertainty and things like that. And so even in the best cases and the worst cases of business, we're not thinking about the fat tail risks that come about with the climate crisis. And so I think that's something that I've been really advocating for in the work with Arctic Base Camp here in Davos, where, yes, we are in the tent, and I think something that I would like to champion moving forward in my career as well. And so I think with all that in mind, with the climate science, one thing that's really important to also consider is being here at Davos, the governance regimes and structures that make it inflexible to adapt to these problems in our society. This includes regimes of inequality, spatial inequality, the fact that there are not many black and brown people at this conference, in this room, etc. But there's also temporal inequality in the fact that you had to make decisions about my childhood that I had no say in, and that future generations just have no systemic way of being in this room and making sure that their voices are heard when reports are quarterly or annually instead of thinking about hundreds of thousands of years into the future. And so I think, especially at Davos, one of the really cool opportunities about being here is that while usually individuals don't get to make a change when it comes to the climate crisis, I think a lot of the people in this room do have that mandate and do have that opportunity to do a lot of good within existing institutions and structures that you benefit from. And I think that comes from a set of choices where it's an iterative process of being courageous, of being ambitious on climate action, even when maybe your partners are against it, when your stakeholders are not feeling up for it. And also the confidence that this can generate wealth and dividends, not just in the monetary returns, but also in community, in resilience, and in climate action. And so I think that's what a just system looks like instead of just a system. And I think we can take that into account today and for the rest of our time here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Angela. Now, I would like to invite Jesper to set the stage for us. He really needs no introduction. I'm sure you know that he has been the CEO of the Inca Group and has had a 20-year career with IKEA. But I wanted to also emphasize he's the co-chair for the Alliance of CEO Climate Leaders here at WEF and part of, and not just part of, but chair of the B team. Jesper, why are we here and what do we hope to accomplish?
Thank you. You made me have to think early in the morning here. 27 years, actually. Yeah. Nobody else has called, so I'm still with the company, so that's what we do. Listen, I'm trying to, I will try to be brief here so we can get into the conversation, but this is a happy moment for me. This is a deeply important and personal topic for me, what we're going to talk about today. And I would like to try to invite you and engage you to see this as not just one out of a lot of hundreds and thousands of good initiatives, but maybe this is one of the big opportunities that we together have actually ahead of us and in our grasp. So let me share the simple background of Action Speaks. It is basically, and we will hear more about it, it is an attempt to create a platform, an open source platform for sharing best practices. There is no company brand, there is no, so to say, there's no back thought around it, except for actually sharing best practices and inspiring people out there. I'm sure that all of us in this room are here because we want to be part of the change. We want to move towards the targets that we all know is so important for humanity, for the existence of humanity. We are in a decade where you can say this is it. We have this decade to turn things around. And thereby, the urgency is enormous. And I think the responsibility that I can sense leading a company tells me, I would say every day, that it's no longer okay to do my business, to assume my role as a CEO and say, that's it, you know. I think all of us in the room here have roles that we have to accept that our roles are much bigger than potentially what it says on our title. We are leaders. And we are in a growing network of people who understand the crisis, but also accept the challenge to face dilemmas and problems and make sure that we resolve this crisis for future generations. I see, and we see, and I know a lot of you see the same three reasons to take actions. One is obviously the ethics of it. We can't allow ourselves to pass on this crisis to the next generation. And I think that's enough. But on top of that, which is very important, speaking to Chris from GlobeScan and to many of you as well, it doesn't make sense from a brand perspective not to be a leader in this space. You don't have to be perfect, but you need to accept the responsibility. I think, Chris, in our latest survey, 30,000 people, something, 33 markets, 68% or thereabouts of people all around the world are deeply worried, are deeply engaged in the topic, and most of them are actually already taking actions in their private lives. So to ignore that customer base would probably not be a good decision for any brand and company. If you travel down in age groups, it's always a higher engagement, by the way, so that tells you about the future. Third, and I could speak a lot to it, I won't today, but the important thing here is we are not a philanthropy. We are not coming here with the philanthropic message of what we want to do. We're coming here to actually marry the necessity of change with creating the new economy. And I'm fascinated about AI and a lot of other revolutions that we are and will experience. But this is the big one, because this touches every part of the value chain that I lead in IKEA, and I'm sure many of you companies in the room as well experience. So with all the respect, this is the new economy. And as always, when you take decisions, you have to mind, where do you place yourself? Are you going to be too early or are you going to be too late? Because it's very difficult to hit it right. I think sometimes to myself, I want to be in the last too early. So too early, too early, too early, too late. So that's too early, I would like. It's very difficult to spot that too early. And that tells me that there is a choice to do. Either you jump on this train, you take some leap of faith. We will fail with some of the decisions we take, but this is going to be defining who is going to be a winner in the new economy. Finally, Action Speaks is based on a couple of notes scribbled on a napkin back in a meeting we had, a One Home, One Planet meeting some 6-7 years ago. And I think it's interesting because these principles, if you like, I think they're logic. They're also converging, and they are predictive. So they help us understand what needs to happen and what needs to come. So 5 principles. We say plans and goals are incredibly important, but in the end of the day, it's only actions that matters. I've heard it this week in almost every session I've been to. It's time for action. We celebrate COP28 and a lot of other decisions, but now it's time for action. 2, none of us will be able to resolve this alone. We need to collaborate among value chains, among peers, together with government representatives, because the system shift that we're up against will ask for all of us to collaborate in ways that we've never done before. Hence, we're here today. Speed. This is not a problem where we can postpone or we can dictate the speed. The speed is set by the problem. So we need to catch up with the issues and basically make sure that we are up to speed in our resolutions. The 4th part, as much as we believe symbolic action can inspire, all of us need to know our Scope 3 total context, and we need to address where we sit with our responsibilities, where we sit with an opportunity and responsibility to make a difference. And the last one, people out there are losing hope. I think people maybe in this room even are losing hope to a certain extent. And the day we lose hope, it's going to be game over. So Action Speaks is about sharing best practices between peers to speed up the implementation and resolution of climate change. It is also about inspiring cross sectors to what can be done. And I will finish with one example in a minute. But the second, and maybe also most important part of this, is to make this public. So that people out there, people on the streets, people in their homes, people that are worried, not only hear that we are too late and that it's too little that happens, but also start to see and recognize all the amazing work done by courageous people taking actions. A few months ago, I had the pleasure to meet a person at lunch, a person representing a big agriculture machine producer in Germany. And we spoke about climate change and the roles we all have. And she being, I think, 2nd or 3rd generation owner of the company said, I would love to. But we have heavy, big machines. And I think we will probably never be able to commit to Paris Agreement and do what it takes. And I agreed. A few weeks later, I had the pleasure to listen to a person leading a mining company in Canada that has done a complete transformation of their equipment. It's all electrified. And so I connected them. And she came back to me recently and said, thank you for the connection. I had no clue it was possible, but it's actually going to define next generation of leadership in our company, because this will make us better. For sure, there are dilemmas. There's not only sunshine stories, but there are so many good stories out there that is worth sharing to people to inspire more. So with these words, please join today. And also more important, join afterwards. Spread the word. We are going to collect examples. We are going to try to launch this in New York at UNGA in a few months from now. And let's see how we do. I think it's worth a try. Thank you so much.
So I would like to introduce 2 additional panelists to come and share their insights with us. Our first panelist is Sumant Sinha, who is the chairman and CEO of Renew, which, you may not know, is the first Indian renewable energy company to be listed on NASDAQ. Welcome. Then I would also like to welcome Helena Helmerson, who is the president and CEO of H&M. Helena. This panel is about real-life action. So often we hear that companies and organizations have targets, they have goals, they know what they want to do by 2050, but we know that if we're going to accomplish any of this, we need steps for what we're doing this year, what we're doing next year. So Helena, my first question is for you. How have you translated climate targets into action?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And Angela, that was super inspiring, and to get your perspective of system change, because that's what we're all part of. We've been working on climate for such a long time. First of all, with energy efficiency that has given us great results. And what's interesting with energy efficiency is that we kind of keep on finding potential. So we're still working with energy efficiency. So there's so many things happening, so it kind of never stops. And then, of course, we've been working for such a long time with our own facilities, solar panels on warehouses, also with our suppliers who has put solar panels on their roofs. But you come to a point when you also really see that this is not enough. You have to go beyond these sites and really change energy systems. And when looking into that and the impact in our value chain, the biggest impact is where the garments are produced, and especially where materials are produced. And then there's been mainly three big barriers. It's been around legislation in certain countries, it's been around making sure that renewable energy is accessible, and then around funding. So we've been doing a lot of public advocacy in many of these countries. For example, in Bangladesh, making sure that private investors can engage in renewable energy projects, which is now possible. So that's great. We just invested ourselves together with others in a big wind farm. So that's awesome. But what I wanted to put more emphasis on, which seems to really move the needle, is around collaborative financing. And that, of course, you can create mechanisms in different ways. We have a green investment team internally that is measured on return on investment on reducing carbon emissions. We've issued a sustainability bond, and we're setting up these type of mechanisms so that suppliers can get hold of funding in a really efficient way for their projects to transition to renewable energy. For example, a collaboration with DBS Bank, the big bank in Southeast Asia, where our suppliers can get loans for really low interest rates. And this is really moving the needle in the system when looking at energy. And again, just super important that we also as leaders, when we're doing this, that we truly have the mindset of, I mean, we need to continue our growth, of course, but at the same time reduce carbon emissions so that we decouple it. And this is what is starting to happen.
I love that you mentioned finance. So I serve as the chief scientist for the Nature Conservancy, among other hats. And one of my favorite solutions at the Nature Conservancy is finance for nature. Nature bonds, where sovereign debt is replaced with a lower interest loan in exchange for climate adaptation, ecosystem preservation, setting aside marine protected areas, all of the actions we need to take to ensure a better future. So thank you for mentioning that. You also mentioned renewable energy, and that is exactly what I want to ask you about, Sumant. So India is now the most populous country in the world. It just happened this year, right? And one of the fastest growing economies, and we hear a lot about how India is transitioning rapidly but still relies so heavily on coal. But you founded the first NASDAQ traded renewable energy company. So how do you see what you are doing in India as sparking climate action across the country?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Is this working? Yeah? Okay, great. Yeah, so I think there is, it's very clear what we need to do. We need to shift at scale. We can't do things at a small individual retail level any longer. It has to be done. Whatever we do now, given the scope and the scale of the problem and the shortage of time that we have, we need to do everything at massive scale. So within that, unfortunately, however, justice is also important. And we need to make sure that this transition is a just transition. Now, countries like India, and I'm going to use India as an example for the global south, are actually, in terms of per capita income levels, quite low at this point in time. And they have not contributed to the carbon emissions in the atmosphere. So the argument from those countries is, look, you cannot compromise on our ability to grow, right? And we will therefore use whatever levers we have to make sure that we deliver economic growth to our people. And if that growth ends up being more carbon intensive than maybe the Western world would like, then don't look to us for that particular problem, a solution, because we have to actually grow and make sure that we deliver this economic growth to our people. Now, India has taken a slightly different view on that. India's view is that, look, this is fundamentally a global problem, that is climate change. We need to make sure that we also contribute to solving it, and at the same time, deliver justice in terms of economic growth. So what India is doing, essentially, is making sure that we grow renewables as rapidly and as fast as possible, right? And we've set a target that we will get to. Today, we have about 150 gigawatts of installed renewable energy capacity. And the target that the government has set is to more than triple that by 2030, to get it up to 500 gigawatts, which will actually make India one of the biggest countries in terms of renewable energy capacity addition over the next several years, right? Now, if you ask me, it's very hard for us to go faster than that, because there are supply chain issues, there are practical issues around implementing these projects on the ground, there are financing issues, and so on, right? But this growth in energy capacity coming from clean sources is unfortunately not enough to meet our economic growth requirements. And so the question is, where is the balanced energy going to come from? And unfortunately, the only solution that we have is coal. And so therefore, some part of future growth requirements for power demand will have to come from coal. And so that is how India is looking at it, that we are doing whatever we can to push forward on renewable energy as much as possible, but then we have to make sure that we cannot compromise on economic growth, and that balance will have to, unfortunately, come from coal. Now, my sense is by 2030, we would have reached peak coal in India, and we would then be able to ramp it down and start moving renewables more and more into the grid. Now, grid management is also a problem. You can't just keep putting more and more renewables into the grid. Grids have to evolve. And so we're doing a lot of very good things on grid management and so on. But the reality is that it all takes time. We can't find these solutions quick enough. And the issue is, unfortunately, that we've got this whole fossil fuel economies that we have created over the last several hundreds of years almost. And to suddenly remove all of that in the next 1 decade, it's very hard. It's not that straightforward. And so we must try all that we can, without a question, and we must look for solutions at scale. And so it's great that corporates like Inca and H&M are, in fact, looking to move out, because ultimately corporates account for 65 to 70% of all global carbon emissions. So if these corporates take actions, then that will drive further change in the system. But we also need civil society, people like Angela, to actually create more pressure in the system so that governments actually move faster. Governments are just not moving fast enough right now. And we all know that's a problem. Even the pledges are not enough, let alone the action, because the action is not even following the pledges, right? And so we're only adding up the pledges right now and seeing whether we get into 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees or 3 degrees. But the reality is, who's measuring the action, and are we really moving as fast as we need to? And the reality is we're clearly not. I mean, that I think, unfortunately, is true, which is great for companies like us, because it means that we have more business, but ultimately that's not the best thing in the world. So I agree with Jesper that you have to have, in some ways, if you don't make the solutioning to this problem attractive from a commercial standpoint, corporates will not move, and capital will not come in. And you need all of that to happen at massive, massive scale for us to solve this problem. Otherwise, it's not going to get done.
It sounds like often when I'm asked, should we do this solution or that solution, my answer is yes, right? That's what I hear you saying.
You need to do everything.
Yeah.
All of us need to do as many things as we possibly can, but we also collectively need to continue to put pressure on governments because there is so much hypocrisy out there. There is so much greenwashing. Governments make commitments, they don't stick to it. The same governments talk about moving to a carbon-free world, but they keep pumping oil to keep enhancing their economic wealth. So there is a lot of hypocrisy, unfortunately, in the whole climate change situation. And I hate to say that because it's not a good thing to say. But unfortunately, that's also what's happening.
All right, now I have a challenge for both of you. I'm going to ask you each a question, but you need to give me a 30-second answer. I know this is difficult, especially early in the morning. Helena, I will ask you first. So we know there's a lot of discussion around issues related to fast fashion. And the solution is not just to cut carbon emissions, but we have to really address a circular economy. How are you doing that at H&M?
But that's the elephant in the room.
It
30
is.
seconds.
I
That's
know,
not
isn't that
fair.
terrible?
Fast fashion is not, I know that's a perception, but that's not what we stand for. It's about making sure that fashion is sustainable fashion is accessible for the many. That's where we're moving, right? And we don't want it to be a luxury for a few. And that's why, to the point of your question, the system around fashion and the whole industry is not circular today. We have to move there. So that's why we've been doing so many things, moving towards 100% sustainable materials, moving towards renewable energy. That's because we're kind of developing our business model. Okay, so 2 parts that is really important for us to do that. That's making sure that the new growth that we add is circular, and it's making sure that our core operations is developed into becoming circular, which obviously is a big effort. So, new circular growth, for example, how we're teaming up with Renewcell, the recycling company, started a new business joint venture on recycling, on collecting and sorting and selling used garments, which is awesome. They just automized the sorting part, which might sound like a small thing. It's game-changing. Investing in Sellpy, we're now a majority owner, a second-hand platform that is absolutely amazing. And when we connect our H&M customer base with Sellpy, that means that is a lot of growth. Then back to our own core and developing our business model. I must say that collaborating with entrepreneurs that comes with solutions is awesome. So we invest in companies, in entrepreneurs, where we see that this is a good standalone business by itself, but also they come with solutions that we need and that we need to integrate. If we take Ambercycle, making sure that polyester in garments is used over and over again. If we look at Infinited Fiber Company, the beautiful fabric of Infinna, this man-made cellulosic that is made out of cotton waste. Or if we look at Colorifix, that are using enzymatic process to mimic colors in nature. And make dyes with less water, less chemicals, and less energy. This is truly how we try to develop our own business model, with working together with others and integrating that also in our core. That was 30 seconds.
I want your watch. But that was very exciting. You can see how once we start talking about solutions, you just want to keep on going and going because there's so many amazing solutions. So Simon, I have a question for you that will hopefully be answerable in 30 seconds, which is if you could share one lesson that you've learned with everyone here, what would it be?
Just one.
Yeah, just one. I'm not letting you have two.
My 30 seconds are going to be as long as Helena's 30 seconds. So look, I think that the one thing that I would say that I have learned over this time period, and I'm thinking furiously about what that one thing is. As I said earlier, the reality is that we need to find solutions that are scalable, and we need to involve more and more people into this whole conversation. Now, the thing that I was thinking about as I was sitting here is that, unfortunately, we tend to move around in echo chambers. And we tend to talk to each other. We're all, sort of converted. We're sort of preaching to the choir. What we really need to do is we need to go out there and we need to actually talk to people in the fossil fuel industry. We need to talk to governments that are not voting for people, leaders who are climate friendly, right? We need to go out there and really take the battle into the streets, as it were. Because if we don't do that, we won't get this mass of people trying to find solutions. And as I said, if governments don't step in, then it's sort of the game theory situation, which if that guy's not doing it, then why should I do it? And that sort of principle tends to come in. So we all need to be doing it. And unfortunately, in the current political situation that we have, there are enough countries who don't feel it's their obligation, despite having done whatever they've done in terms of doing what they have. So I think that's really one thing that we need to do. We really need to, all of us, be evangelizers outside of rooms like this. And the second thing, I know you asked for only one, is, as I said earlier, we need to find solutions that are really, really scalable. Because that is the only way in which we're going to get to actually bringing down carbon emissions in the rate that we want.
Exactly. Scaling and partnerships and collaboration. So Jesper, last question for you. This is the second Action Speaks Summit, I believe, right? Climate Week, we started there. What's next? Where are you taking this?
So this is basically an initiative where we hope that we will land it and make this fly. In New York, we started it. We started a conversation, and there was an incredible interest, and it resonated with so many people. Now it's really work in progress. It's about sharing the status of the work in progress, but it's also inviting all of us here and a lot more in our networks to be curious and to come forward with the best concrete actions and best practices. In New York, if it works in New York, we will launch the platform. So we're going to look at prototype stage now, and we are collaborating together with amazing WEF here, who has helped us and basically providing us with the technicalities and the support in order to make it happen. We work with Project Drawdown for verification, and we're collecting partners for how do we set up the scrutiny and the system and the structure around this platform. So hopefully it will be launched in September.
Wonderful. Please thank our panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So now, Ludwig, if you wouldn't mind coming up, he's going to share a video of the prototype for the Action Speaks network.
Thank you. I have my own speech. So good morning, everyone. I'll be quick. My name is Ludwig. As Jesper said, the Climate Action Speaks is about scaling solutions with speed and impact. So if we start the video, I will showcase what we developed together with the support of World Economic Forum, together with the Forum Spaces with the support of Center for Nature and Climate. And hopefully the video is coming on. So Action Speaks, as we developed the prototype, it consists of 3 movements. It's about the community which we want to grow. We're here to grow that community through an event like this one. But we're also looking in how the platform will be developed going forward. The platform, as you see it now, is organized into 5 topics: how we eat, how we move, how we power, how we make, and how we grow. Those topic areas have been developed together with the Project Jordan Solution Framework, which you might know, to make it really impactful and also looking at what's available today in the market, but as well as what is scalable to the panel's discussions, really looking at what is scalable, impactful, and so forth. The action library is where you can search and browse for different type of good examples. This example we're looking at now is Nopla, which is an Earthshot Prize winner. They develop a seaweed packaging business, which goes into packaging and removing plastic. So it's a fantastic example among others. We have also today here Upfield. We will also demonstrate some part of their solution. But this showcase that we will try to bring forward those good examples and making it simple as possible to consume and look for these examples. You can also go into the topic areas, into the solution areas, to look at improved materials. This example is together with SSAB, together with Volvo Cars, which we have here as well, which is a fantastic collaboration with 2 industries comes together with fossil fuel steel, which then enables people to, or the industry to transition towards a net zero 2050. And of course, with these good examples and the community we're building now, we want to grow that community. So the last part is we want here today to announce we want to get people involved, so you can all register if you have a good example to contribute towards the platform. But with that said, I spoke very fast. I'm handing over to Jim to talk a little bit about Volvo cars.
Thank you very much. Thanks. So first of all, it's fantastic to be here. I feel privileged. Fantastic. Totally inspiring. Thanks to the rest of the panel. But let me just call out as well Jesper for the work that he does tirelessly, not just in this work, but with the CEO Alliance as well. And it's fantastic to see real leadership step up and move the needle forward. Volvo Cars was born 100 years ago. We were born on the ocean, on the west coast of Sweden, a majesty of nature. And although I'm not Swedish, you only need to go there to realize the deep roots that Volvo Cars has to sustainability. And of course, as part of our journey, our purpose is to give people the freedom to move in a safe, personal and sustainable way. And that's as true today as it was 100 years ago. Now, we're only 1% of the total car sales in the world. So we're a relatively small player. But for whatever reason, we have a much bigger voice than that 1%. And that's great. But with that comes a massive responsibility that we need to step up and we need to make that voice heard. So we're trying as much as we possibly can. We're actually trying to drag some of the other automakers into this same sphere of thinking. And it will take time, but we feel that we're making some good progress. So we're a reasonably large company. We're $40 billion in revenue, and we're big enough that we can move the dial. We're an engineering company. We literally have over 15,000 engineers, and that brings with it, I think, a responsibility, because the answers to a lot of these questions will come through the technical channels. It will come through technical investments, and it will also come through the financial investments that we make for the long, long term. Not always popular with stakeholders, because as Angela was saying, we often look at this as a quarterly earnings call, and that's gone. We really need to lift our eyes. But we also need to move to the next stage now, which is the whole action piece. It's great that we talk, but we need to move to action. So at Volvo Cars, we have stopped diesel. That was an unpopular decision. The amount of emails that I got from customers saying, I cannot believe you stopped diesel. We love your diesel. I know. However, lift your eyes a little bit and realize that this is the time. We've stopped all our investment in internal combustion engines. We're 100% in now on electrification. We've said we will be a 100% electric company by 2030. We'll be 50% there by 2025. And in the car industry, that's just around the corner. It is amazing how much pressure I get from the investment community that says, are you guys sure? Are you moving too fast? I'm like, look at Tesla. It's proven. We're not the only guys out here saying that Tesla's done it. And by the way, their market cap is higher than anybody else in the industry. So there's no real further excuses for us not to move to electrification. I'm an engineer by background, and I just look at the technology. And at the end of the day, technology wins. It always does. And when you look at electrification versus internal combustion engine, a really good internal combustion engine, is 35% efficient. 35. Our latest e-motors is 93% efficient. You really don't need to be a data scientist to figure out that that's a big difference. You have no noise, you have no heat, you have no vibration, you have very, very little service and cost for the customers, and you have zero tailpipe emissions. And yet still we're asking the question, should we let go the past of ICE and move towards a full electric future? Now I get the challenges with that. It only makes sense if we have green energy. So we need to put pressure on the governments to say we need that green energy, and we also need to work with our suppliers. So it was great to see, I don't know if the guys from SSAB here today, but that's been a great collaboration between SSAB and Volvo Cars, and that's moving us from talk to action. The same with Northvolt, where we're doing green batteries with Northvolt in Sweden using hydro energy. And these are the kind of proof points, I think, that we need to stick in the ground and say, we can prove it works. And so, again, it's back to that societal benefit that we think that we can help bring for the longer term, for the next generation. I have 4 children, and my daughter is by far the most vocal, and she says, it's like you guys went to the bar and got drunk, and now we're having to clean the whole thing up. So thanks for that, Dad. And that, you know, sometimes children have a way of really punching home. So, but listen, I would just like to end with saying we're delighted to be part of this. We're going to keep pushing, even though it's not popular. We're in this for the long term. We think we can make a difference. And I'm delighted to be working with people like Jesper and like-minded people around the table here. So thanks for the opportunity.
And so I want to end our time together, which has included so many different discussions of solutions, with just 2 more small ones. Would you be able to share the need for sharing information, not just between companies, but between citizens, which I've heard discussion at some of these tables?
So we heard a lot today, and I think I'm going to sum up some words that we agreed as a table, and I'm not going to get all of them. We thought financing, absolutely. This is going to be one of the things that, as we go forward, we will need action to speak louder, and it needs to be backed up with money. A scale. All of these projects are fantastic, but if they don't reach everyone everywhere, we've not done what we're set out to do. Innovation. At our table, we've got brilliant minds who are doing really very cool things at the community, and they need help to go to scale. Accountability, it's all great, but we also need to have all the credibility and to back it up. In order to do that, we've decided that there is, as much as we need peer support, we also need peer pressure. And that goes to advocacy so that we have the policy changes that we do need in order to be able to go to scale. So it's all very circular for us to be able to get into the green transitions we need and the climate justice that people demand.
Excellent. Thank you for that summary. So, in conclusion, Jesper, if you don't mind, yeah? You again. No. So you mentioned briefly, and I just want you to reiterate for people, this is part of something that is turning into something that you are going to be announcing in September.
That sounded mysterious. Yes, maybe. Demystifying it. No, again, please connect with us. I think if you don't have the access to the data, please let us know. Ludde has all the data. I think the concreteness of the pilot, we call it pilot, right? Or no, not pilot, we call it prototype. Excellent. I think the prototype tells it all in a way. And the intention is that we will have impact together. So please join, spread it to your friends in the network, and let's see if we can bundle a lot of good stories like we've heard today to make this happen. And I have to share, maybe you have heard it, maybe not, but I have to share, this is not to blow the IKEA and Inca trumpet here, but we are, next week, we are publishing our annual report. And it's a great example because we will then share 30.9% growth since Paris, which is, I think, some companies have grown more, some less, but it's not bad, it's growth. We have 24.3% absolute carbon reduction since then, okay? So, and I have to say with deep respect that, you know, this is not just a straight line. There will be years where we stagnate or maybe even take a step in the wrong direction. But the long-term direction, this is not by chance. This is engineered by knowing the carbon footprint and basically making investments. And as you understand, the 30.9 tells us it's not a bad business to reduce yourself from carbon. I think it's one of the greatest myths out there. Carbon equals cost. If you reduce carbon, you will be more successful. You reduce your cost base. So let's also make sure we tell the business side of the stories when we embark on that journey. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you so much.